and welcome. I am Piers Ridyard, CEO of RDX Works, a core developer of the decentralized finance protocol, a public ledger entirely focused on bringing DeFi into the mainstream. Today, we are doing another roundtable, and I have with you the great people of Jeremy, our Chief Marketing Officer, Matthew, our Chief Product Officer, and Russell, our Chief Technology Officer. We have some great questions from the community, but what we're going to do is we're going to start off with something a little different, because I think we've just had a huge technology release in the form of Alphanet for Babylon. And we've seen some chatter to and fro about the fact that this hasn't really brought any new functionality to the from what was being used before with the PTE, which is the programming environment that you could build crypto stuff and you could play around with it basically in a sandbox environment on your computer. And I don't want to just let pass by quite how big an achievement and quite how much technology has gone into delivering what Babylon is. So I'm gonna pass it on to those people far more smart and capable than I am to give you a bit of a rundown on that. If you want to kick us off, Russ.
Yeah, so that was, I think we should have done a better job of communicating what Alphanet was ahead of time, which is that since the release of Alexandria last Christmas time, roughly just before Christmas, everything you do in Scripto is running on a single processor. It's running on there's a local file system based ledger. It doesn't handle all the primitive state and all that in the way that the distributed network does. There's no argument on what is the result of a transaction, right? Whatever you execute is the result. There's no consensus on it. If something was non-deterministic, it wouldn't matter because there's only one thing processing it, only one answer coming. The point of Alphanet was to take us out of that world and put us back on a distributed network with consensus happening, with validators voting on, like, hey, I agree with this result and all that. The whole point, the mark of success was that everything that you could do on your simulator and on the public test environment would just seamlessly carry over to Alphanet. And that's what we achieved with just very tiny adjustments to, there's a Scripto very minor release patch for things that changed. So we were overjoyed that we got exactly what we wanted. And then it was a bit of a letdown and people say, yeah, but what can I do that I couldn't do on the PTE? And there's a bit of a, well, this is amazing. All the people who are doubting, yeah, but you're just executing code, man. It's not, consensus isn't processing it. Anybody can write anything that processes a transaction locally. So yeah, I felt like a little bit of the wind came out of my sails when people weren't really excited, like, holy shit, it's all married up and everything works just like they said. So
yeah, it's like the amazing thing about
tremendous effort to get to that point.
It's like the amazing thing about Ethereum when that was released wasn't like, oh wow, the virtual machine. Like, here is something that can run code. Like, the amazing thing was it's running on a consensus network. There was this enormous amount of work to make that happen. So it's like we've now brought that together for Radix, and like the head of our network team has this amazing system diagram that I want to have printed out like poster size because it needs to be that big to read it, that like describes the interacting modules between Radix engine and consensus stuff, to like describes what it took to get to Alphanet. It's amazing.
It's almost wall size, not poster size. Yeah. It's a little bit of a disservice to call it poster size.
It's quite true. Yeah.
I think that one of my friends who I still remember this conversation like so clearly, because it was one of those like gut punch moments from someone when someone says something that's the truth and you're like, damn. Which was I was doing a previous business of mine, and he was asking me like why what I was doing was cool, and I was describing to him all the ways that the technology was amazing, and he stopped me and he went, Piers, no one gives a fuck about your tech. Like, what does it do? And I was just like, oh, that hurts. That's right in the geek spot. That is. But like, like to take the opposite point here, in this early stage where we are still essentially forging the path forwards for how any of this technology can work. There is no playbook. There is no path, not when you're building an entirely new execution environment with an entirely new programming language on top of an entirely new consensus system. And the fact that that is now running on a decentralized ledger with multiple nodes running it and can deal with contentious activity, i.e. attempts at double spend, like making sure that everything is deterministically executed, and doing that in a way that developers can build on top of it and interact their code with other people's code. And it's huge. It's genuinely huge. And like one of the more difficult things that we've had to deliver so far. So, I'm
going to try one more metaphor. I've been watching the show For All Mankind. It's like this cool alternative history thing about the space race and everything. And like, you see the astronauts they go into the simulator and they're doing everything they do they would to land on the moon. They go through like all the procedures of like moving the LEM and switching between systems and doing all this kind of stuff. And they do it over and over and over again. And it's as if like if all you had was just a camera inside the module, the difference between the simulator and actually landing on the moon would look like the same thing. You'd just be like, yeah, all you astronauts did was do the same thing you've done 50 times before. What's the big deal? It's like, the difference is we did it on the moon. Like it's different.
That was just practice before.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So congratulations.
We should have used
Go on, Jeremy.
beforehand.
What was that? Sorry?
I said we should have used that analogy beforehand because that was an absolute winner.
Yeah.
That would have been a good piece of marketing content to have at the appropriate time, say when creating a blog post. So let's have these ideas, in a timely fashion in the future.
We're putting the Radix engine and the scripter on a decentralized ledger, not in the next year, not because I can't remember what the American speech is, so I'm just doing terrible impression of that. What was
that was a Kennedy. You were doing Kennedy there.
Yeah, okay, what was the Kennedy speech?
Yeah. We cannot guarantee that we'll be successful in this effort, but we can guarantee that any failure to make us will be last. We can't guarantee we'll be first. Any failure to make this effort.
We're releasing Alphanet not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
Yes, that's it. That's the one I was looking for. There we go.
We choose to release Alphanet. That's okay.
we choose to release Alphanet in this decade. All right.
Yeah. And also just all the little bits underneath, like how state is managed and all that kind of stuff, that's also going to the real way things are done. So there's a bunch, it's not just the consensus part, it's basically the engine throwing away all the parts that are faked about like, oh, we just store this as this blob and we'll deal with that later because we don't care about performance on a single node. And to pedantically correct you, Alphanet is not a decentralized ledger. We run all the nodes at the moment. It's a distributed ledger.
Distributed, sure.
We will go to decentralized.
Distributed.
Yes. Just in case somebody wants to nitpick that one.
Decentralizable.
Decentralizable ledger.
Yeah, that's decentralizable.
Okay. And so we did the Alphanet. That was great. Huge lift by the tech team, but it wasn't just the tech team. It was also marketing. You guys did some great stuff as well. So, Jeremy, tell us a little bit about Project Sparta.
Yeah, so we took advantage of the fact that Alphanet was coming, and we understood how awesome it was that we didn't fully appreciate the moon landing, I think, until recently, but we now appreciate it more. But we saw this as an opportunity, along with all the exchange listings that we had in September, to really tell a story of Radix momentum. So we organized sort of almost like a D-Day type moment on the 28th. Now, I think whatever that Thursday was, it's all blur. And we just went hard across multiple fronts, across PR, across social, across influencer, across blogs, and what have you. And the numbers, well, I'll just read some of them. We dropped 2 press releases. We had 27 different articles get picked up. We had a 26% increase in website visitors. We had a 116% increase in messages sent on Discord and 84% increase in new members on Discord. We had a 174% increase in new members to Telegram. We had a 1,633% increase in the number of views on our Reddit posts. We had a 72.5% increase in the number of mentions of our Twitter handle. We had approximately estimated 1.3 million impressions as a result of all of our not just some of the highlights right there. I mean, and this was totally a coordinated effort. Plus, we had emails going out both to our developer and our main list. We had all kinds of activity from the universities. We had threads from Cambridge and Hopkins and Purdue and a few others. I mean, it was just like a big day, and the number of people who saw us, plus we've had, follow on from that as well. So, the Alphanet just gave us sort of the fuel, and we just put it in the car and we went out and we said, look, Radix is rolling here and we're moving in the right direction on the way to Babylon. So it was an amazing team effort. And, I'm grateful that the tech team gave us an amazing story to build a campaign around.
Yeah. Fucking great. Absolutely great. So let's move on to the questions that we've got from the community, and the next thing on the horizon is RadFi, right? So what can there's a question from Radix Maxi. Can you go into details on what will be shown at RadFi 2022, and will it be a yearly event? And before you answer that question, Jeremy, what is RadFi?
RadFi is our opportunity to set forth our radically different vision for what a decentralized financial future looks like, articulate what that is, and then provide concrete supporting evidence on how we are bringing that vision closer with each passing day. Shall we say it that way, perhaps?
And are we going to talk about what we're going to be talking about at RadFi at all?
It's like Fight Club, right? We don't. I'd say, look, I don't want to commit to making it an annual event, but we certainly have put it in the mental calendar as RadFi should be an annual tentpole event where we continue to reinforce our vision to the market and we talk about the progress that we've made. I certainly would like to do that. And with your help, community, we will make that happen. But a lot of this is contingent upon having a nice turnout at RadFi. Now, RadFi, as I've written in Radix reports and marketing shards and multiple times, RadFi, if you're watching this roundtable, it's not for you. We want you there, but it's not for you. It's for all the people who you've been telling about Radix, who are wondering why you've had this revelation, why you're so crazy about Radix. It's an opportunity for them to understand in a consumable way what our unique vision is, why our technology is radically different, and what are some of the pieces that will make that help them understand how we're building towards that and delivering on the technology stack that we have. So hopefully an annual event. Don't want to promise because I know someone will play this back to me next year when we change our mind or whatever, but hopefully an annual event. I'm not going to go into details about RadFi. All I'm going to say is that if you're watching this, I'm counting on you to get me a bunch of people to show up at RadFi. And then afterwards, you can tell us how great it was.
I will also say that for anyone in our community, there's going to be some interesting stuff in there as well. Like, yes, the messaging is going to be easier to get hold, like easier to understand than a lot of the stuff. And like, I got some feedback today about my conversation with Scott Melker about how technical I like to talk. Again, going back to my friend's comment to me about Piers, no one gives a fuck about your tech. So we take the feedback, and I think that maybe
we could say something like, the event's not really for you, but when you come to the event, we don't expect you to be disappointed.
No. And there's definitely going to be things in there that you haven't seen before. So like, yeah, there's something for everyone.
You'll be happy. You're just not the primary target audience.
You're just not the primary target audience. So we keep doing a lot. That's good.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of it where you're going, yeah, that's what I've been trying to tell people, and then there'll be some little surprises in there. There'll be some fun.
Yeah. Cool. So next question is from Blindsight. And these are questions that sort of we've covered a little bit in when we're talking about the Alphanet, but and they're questions that have been asked a few times in the community, so we thought we'd highlight them here. So 1, how many nodes are participating in consensus of Alphanet? 2, can the community observe, confirm this network from outside, e.g. the PTE? And 3, what's different about the old concept of Betanet, March 2022, and the I think he means March 2023.
When we announced the March 2022 post was about when we said Betanet, right?
Got it. So what's different about the old concept of Betanet in March 2022, and what's the new concept of RCnet?
Okay. So for question 1 on how many nodes participate in consensus, Alphanet all told is 6 nodes, 4 of which participate in consensus. They are geographically distributed. The reason why we don't do more is it doesn't teach us anything we don't already know from running Olympia and internal test networks. So as to how the community can confirm this is actually a network and we haven't faked the whole thing, I mean, I guess we could show you our AWS bill. Or you can, if you start looking at the transaction endpoints, in the status, you see stuff about the mempool that has no bearing on when the PTE ran. I mean, I guess we could have faked the moon landing too, right? But we would just be in even worse shape when things are supposed to go in, releasing in Betanet. We'd be digging our hole. So I guess I can't prove it to you if you don't take my word that it's.
There's also the open source code. So if you really, really want to.
No. So Babylon, no, we have not open sourced yet. Part of that is just there's people coming in. There's a lot of, we all know what's going on at RDX Works, and folks deep in the community do. But if you just have another open source repo and someone who doesn't know what's going on, it's confusing as to what's live and what's not and so forth. So until we get some better documentation around it, we're not going to open source that. We will certainly do so by Betanet, which also I imagine would allay this concern once and for all.
Right. Okay. So at the moment, you just have to trust us on that. By Betanet.
You got to trust us on that one.
Yeah, by Betanet.
Why would we bother faking something that doesn't have
we already had
features? Right.
Why?
Anyway, but it's a good conspiracy theory. I like it.
What is the so for Betanet? What's we expecting for Betanet?
So what are we expecting from it?
Yeah,
Oh, the difference in the concepts that he's asking about. Basically what we said was going to be Betanet back in last March was basically the starting gun for integrators. So from that perspective, yes, this is the new concept of having this release candidate net takes the place of that in that it's that portion of, if you're a third-party integrator who, you're an exchange or whatever it is, this is the time when you can do your implementation, complete it, and know that it's going to run on production, right? But a lot of the things that were coming in that were promised in March for Betanet, like your exposure to the wallet and all that stuff, those things are still happening. The main difference is we have to pick a point where we can tell people who are integrating that are, like if you're writing crypto stuff, you can get started right now, right? That's not who the delay is really about. It's about ones that people say, hey, I got this team of developers. I have to slot in when they're going to spend 1 month doing this and say they're done. And the way
they need like a locked API because they don't want to have to tweak things later. Right. And
yes, and as we've already
in conversation, they said, "Oh, it's going to be pretty good." They just go, "No, call me when it's done."
Right. As we've already experienced, multiple times. If you change an API, they're like, "No, we'll just keep the old one."
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, we don't need to go into all that. Right? Suffice to say. The way things have gone down, the APIs we release with Betanet are not ones that I'd be able to go to an exchange and say, yep, that's exactly how it's going to be. Go integrate, right? That wouldn't be a fair promise to make.
But for our developers, we totally are going to expect people to it'll be like a notch up for like, all right, test, deploy, get your applications running on Betanet. You don't have to wait for RCnet. Like that's what it's for. There's lots of stuff you'll be able to do. And the differences from that to RCnet will be minimal for you.
Yeah.
If you are in active development, changing from Betanet to RCnet will be very little work for you. Right? It's really these people that say, no, I absolutely have to have, this is the interface, I integrate, we mark it done, and we move on. Right? Betanet's not going to be that.
Which is, exactly what exchanges do, for example, where they will go, right, we will do this thing and then we'll move on and it just sits on a server and it never gets touched again. And if it gets touched, then that's a bit of a lift, and it takes a long time to convince them to do that. So
Yep.
Be noted, anyone who is has an integration point for exchanges, that you really do need to make sure that your APIs are rock solid before that bit. And so RCnet is basically just being like, that is the date that we can be clear that there's going to be no changes to interfaces and things like exchanges, things like custodians, all of the kind of like slow moving parts that are in basically your core infrastructure for a public ledger is solid. Okay.
It's the starting game for them. Go integrate, be done, stamp it. You've got a predictable amount of time to finish up, and then you'll run when mainnet launches.
Next question is from a person's username, which is multiple people, which is a really good, confusing.
I think this is just it's a summary question. Basically,
I think it actually is multiple people.
No, I think the username is multiple people.
Oh, is it? All right.
Oh, is it a summary question? Okay.
No, it's not. This is a summation.
Okay, all right. I was really hoping that it was actually called multiple people. It's a great username. It's like I've always wanted to call myself a reliable source. Can you talk about the reason for the schedule change? What happened?
I will talk about the reason for the schedule change, and I'll give the short answer first, which is the bottom of the stack. There are many parts of everything to get the full ecosystem, but the bottom of the stack, the core engine operations, how things are stored, how transactions are run, how that surface up to higher levels, took us longer than we thought to settle it down into ready to build the things atop it. And because it took longer for us to get to a point of like, hey, this is now properly consumable by the gateway, which in turn needs to be properly consumable by the wallet, all the things that are at the higher level, the point when they expected to be doing a lot of meaningful work, got like, I'm not ready for you yet, right? And so that pushed them out. And because it pushed them out, it ate the slack time we had in the schedule. And some of these things, like the stuff we just mentioned on the exchanges, without us doing these integrations to tune these interfaces and then kind of preview them around with people, my confidence level that the interfaces would be good, like would be solid and final at Betanet, basically dropped to very, very low. The sensible thing to do is say, okay, let's still get all the features in that we want so devs can do all their stuff. But basically, because we have all these other consumers of it higher up the chain, it's not fair to try to squeeze everything into this tiny timeline and hope we get it exactly right the first time. The longer answer ties into the nobody's ever done this stuff before, right? Like things you plan for stuff. I think we're pretty good at making good projections. But as you get to implementation, you find out that, these few systems that we designed to work slightly differently, there's actually this common way of doing this, which we could actually do an elegant change to the Radix engine kernel, which would process all these different things in the same way. It'd be like this one elegant single interface for whether I'm approving a state transition or this particular system call. It's like you have general relativity. Fits good theory, works for a lot of stuff, and then we get to the quantum world and we're like, this is like the rules are all different. And wouldn't it be great if you had the universal theory of everything, which would like marry these things up perfectly? For some of the way that the engine operates, we've come up with the universal theory of everything, and we're like, we absolutely want to implement this. We're not going to go, because we're going to live with this architecture possibly forever, certainly for a very long time, of how the kernel operates and everything. Let's go make that change now and not worry about being saddled with this less than optimum architecture. And then we also just had a couple of critical staff had real world things happen, which take away some of their availability. I mean, these things happen in software development. There's some of the sentiment is also, well, why don't you just pick a date that you absolutely know you can hit, right? That's bad. That's a bad development practice. If you get into managing software development, that's a really bad idea, because you want to have, there's a healthy amount of pressure on everyone to know that we have a date we are working for, and we're all treating it as a real date. We're believing it's the real date. You don't communicate something you don't feel you can't. Like any date that we say, we believe we can hit it if we release it. But we also know that it's not a 100% chance. And you want people to be aiming towards, we are marching to this date, we are going to make it. And then if we determine that we're not, then we go reassess and reevaluate. But what you don't want to ever do is set. We're going for this date, but the public date is this one much further out, because then it gives everybody this internal license to just go, oh yeah, but it's all going to be delayed. So I'm not going to raise that. I don't think I'm going to make the date we're talking about internally. Yeah, going beyond that would get us into really, really low level stuff of like, what exactly did you run into? I think
there's an important lesson here, which is like, as a company, as people, you want to make high integrity commitments, but from a point of view of being true to the wider mission or vision of what you're trying to build, there has to be conditions under which you will decide to move high integrity commitments. You're making the commitments on the basis of the information that you have available and on the fact that you and the team have a very strong belief in your ability to do that. That high integrity for people is really important. Like the whether or not something feels genuine when it's first done actually it goes into things like personal motivation and a bunch of other stuff as well. Like trying to shimmy these things in a way that is that feels like you're constantly playing two games actually affects motivation, morale, and a bunch of other stuff as well. So high integrity commitments are critical, but there is also the bigger vision of what you're working at. And there comes a point where you go, is it higher integrity to keep the commitment, or is it higher integrity to the vision to change the commitment to enable something that was not previously possible, or to facilitate, not compromising on something critical to a system? And so, when you have both the ability to do optimizations that you're going to live with for a very long time. I always compare shipping public ledgers like shipping hardware. Like the speed at which these things, this low level, change is basically never, right? Like the kernel of Bitcoin or the kernel of Ethereum, like how much has that changed since day one? Not really at all. So, and like you see that in computing as well. How much has the Unix kernel changed or the Linux kernel changed? Not a huge amount. It changes very, very, very slowly. So like these are we feel the weight of these decisions from the point of view of the system that we're building. And so there's a high integrity commitment to that as well. And at this point, one of them, making sure that it was right because of the weight of the decisions that are being made at that level, outweighed the commitment that we always try and keep. We have been consistently delivering on the dates that we say that we are going to make sure that we are keeping true to the vision of what we're trying to build. Phil Gibson, what have you learned from the Olympia network being live? Any changes in assumptions, any potholes that were unexpected, any changes in theories and learning for Babylon and beyond? It would be good to hear a bit of retrospective and hear insights into challenges and learnings. Russell, you basically, this is a round table for you.
This is just my round table. You guys can go. Yeah, we did learn a great deal. Some of it was, see you, Jared. Some of it was in some ways, it's happy confirmation of assumptions. The Radix engine V1 in this case, where we had this notion of the system recognizes a token as a real thing, was absolutely the right thing to do. The amount of the products people are building, even in a way where they're, they have some kind of centralized thing that's talking to the decentralized public ledger. A lot of what is being done and being done safely is because of this decision to make native assets, right? We have done nothing but see like this was a great, great way to go. This is the way forward. It's carried forward to like, good, let's make it more powerful at Babylon, right? Like the resources model is that V2 and it's much, much improved, much, much better. But it's that same idea of assets must be part of the fabric of the platform and everyone must speak this language of assets. We certainly, I'd say on node running, there are some hiccups, are some things that are difficult as a node runner, like the patch process and stuff like that, which we are addressing for Babylon. We'll have some details around how that works. We also learned the the consequence of a validator going down, the slowdown in consensus, basically, even if there wasn't a network demand didn't require that it be up, basically the changes in emissions and so forth, it's a problem that has to definitely be addressed, and it's a thing that we are going to be addressing. I think other than that, for learnings, we know we need a better wallet experience, but we've known that. We're working on that. And I think on the whole, as far as operation goes, we've had 100% uptime. So we're really happy that, our diligent testing and the way we carefully thought about things, that's all worked.
Yeah. I mean, the 100% uptime's big. I think that's easy to just be like, oh yeah. I mean,
yeah, sure. 100% uptime system. That's nothing. Of course you have. No, that's really hard, guys.
Yeah, that's really hard.
That's insanely hard.
Mm-hmm.
And uptime through coordinated forking. That was, although it didn't release with Olympia, these are the coordinated protocol updates where we have a different version that nodes adopt. That was a heavy bit of thinking to make that work smoothly. And I'm really happy that we've done that for Olympia and tested everything out there and know that the concepts work. Because, of course, as you go to Babylon and the network really gets much more interesting to much more people, the stakes become much higher to make sure that you don't have any kind of period of a downtime due to you had some flaw in your design of how that protocol update works.
There's also some of the stuff on the Gateway. I mean, we've talked about this in past roundtables about there was sort of the momentous change in how, I mean, the creation of the Gateway to begin with, and understanding it's like, okay, this is really the way in which you want to expose data on the ledger through this different mechanism. And that change has been really good since then. And I think we've also been learning about, like, even though the current wallet we knew was going to be a throwaway wallet, and we were changing the whole philosophy of it for Babylon, it's still been like the connection between the wallet and the gateway and that interplay and understanding sort of like, okay, this is actually the most useful way of indexing data to interact with a client. And this is what the calls want to look like. So you kind of minimize load. It's like, it's not sort of like consensus layer sort of stuff. It's more just practical considerations of like, oh, okay, if you've got a real network that people are trying to do stuff on, this is the bit that's more important to optimize. And this part doesn't really get stressed out that much. And so there's been a lot of that sort of incremental learning that I think has come out of Olympia that's been valuable.
Yeah. Stuff like people will have wallets that have many hundreds of different assets in them because assets are things that are created and they're held there. So we didn't know what that actually happened, or would it be, yeah, everybody would just have a few, like a couple people would do an airdrop and that would be it. And so we've experienced the gateway performance knock-on considerations with wallet. But it's like, yeah, I have literally 150 different assets in my wallet right now, and I'm getting many, many dozens of transactions per day to it.
The thing that's blown me away, like this is sort of like, having a running network, there's been two things that I think have been incredible from the community. The first has been the Node Runner community. Like, just such a huge hats off to you guys. Like, the professionalism and the helpfulness and the desire to make sure that this critical piece of infrastructure is running correctly, and that the ownership that they had over that right from the start has been incredible. Like, I've genuinely been blown away by the entire Node Runner community. I think you guys are amazing.
And doing voluntary things like saying, I'm not accepting any more stake, my percent is high enough. Like, that's a really selfless, good health of the network thing to do. That before Olympia, when we said there weren't going to be limits on staking and stuff, people were going, oh, you're crazy. It'll go to 3 nodes have 90% of the stake because everybody's greedy. And it turned out, no, we have an amazing community that really self-regulate and manage and communicate well, and they don't behave badly.
Right.
And it's interesting. You talk about experience from Olympia, you tend to think about tech, but really it's sort of a social learning. Like, right. we've gotten experience with what it's like to have a community wrapped around a piece of technology, and like the fact that, in a lot of cases, culture trumps technology in both directions. That, good culture is better than a lot of technology solutions. And if culture isn't there, like there are things you just can't fix in technology. So like having, having all that live, having not just the technology live, but having a community that's live, and, building the relationships and, fielding the questions and everything like that is, it's kind of like with crypto. It's like you can't simulate this stuff ahead of time. And so if like having gone through this 1.5 year period of having that before going to a network that we're saying, all right, this is where DeFi really begins on Radix, like jumping straight to that we would have made a lot of bad choices. Because we would have just been guessing at a lot of things. And some of that has to do with both community as well as technology.
Right. And then the other thing that has been amazing has just been the number of projects that are already doing stuff, even on Olympia, is unbelievable. Like the number of DeFi projects, of NFT projects, like gaming projects, and the quality at which those projects are progressing has been amazing. The way in which people are building community has been incredible. The support, again, the supportiveness that people have for people giving it a go and having, like, I can't imagine a community more supportive of like other people's ideas and just having a go. And I think that that's just such an important thing to nurture. Like, so building a company is such a difficult thing to do. It's such a risk that you have to take as an individual. And the risk is actually not losing money. The risk for most people is that feeling stupid. Like, that's normally the barrier. That's the bigger barrier for a lot of people, is feeling stupid about what they're doing, and like being open and willing to listen and being supportive can have more of an effect than you can possibly imagine on people who are taking those first steps to starting their business. And again, something that I just see as incredible within our community. So also keep that up, guys. Like, someone, it's like, hey, I've got an idea, listen to them, give them a go, give them a shot, and like help them take those first steps to try out whatever it is, because that's where it could, and that's where it comes from. And like, maybe it's not that idea, but maybe they give it a go, and then the next idea ends up being, you know, the thing that propels the next wave of DeFi, and we didn't even see it coming, but like only comes from that sort of rich earth of people being supportive of others.
Yeah, if I may, a couple things about the community that are so valuable from a marketing perspective. And I just have to jump in here because, you know, I was getting bored with Russ talking the whole time. I've been speaking to a lot of press and, you know, analysts recently. And when you tell them about the amount of activity on a platform where you can't even do smart contracts, it's like, they can't get their head around. It's like, does not compute,
right?
You know, and that the raw numbers as well as the examples are so valuable on the front end, as well as we start to tell our story and convince people that, you know, we're the real deal, and so that's really valuable. And I think, to your point, encouraging people and the kind of community that we have is really, I get a lot of comments about that, like, you know, Russ talking about quantum theory and classical physics. People in our community appreciate that level. And you and I got ripped on our whole AWS conversation about Tesla versus Edison. And they're like, that's what we want. And it's just like the people who have come here and have been nurtured, like, understand that this is a different group of people who are committed to this vision of a radically better financial system and are so eager to make it happen that they're starting before they have like a full featured platform.
Right.
And that full package, and you've seen, just the last thing I guess is, I've seen a lot recently on Twitter about this conversation of mercenary versus missionary, you know, and they talk about all these Web 2 people who came and, you know, were chasing money, they're mercenary, and now during the winter they've sort of left. Meanwhile, the missionaries are here. People in our community are missionaries. And that makes a huge difference when you tell our story. So I love the fact that we ship and we have people who are actually building stuff. And, you know, it shows what kind of energy we have, sort of potential energy we have when things get realer, I should say.
Yeah. All right. So next question is from Tales of Beam. Hey, Tales of Beam. Tales of Beam was with us on the RedFu hackathon. So every time I see his name, I'm like, yeah. Will instapass also have alpha Betanet implementations for people to test out, or is that much later down the line post Babylon? Good question, because we haven't really spoken about this properly. So, Matt.
I'm going to pass it to Russ. Russ is a better job with this one. I just want Russ to do the entire thing.
That's not a good thing, right? So I think that the spirit of this question is when, as a developer, when will I be able to have sort of KYC as a service, right? Which is what we're ultimately wanting to be one of the goals of instapass, where you don't have to build your complete own compliance stack if you're able to integrate with instapass.
Yeah. Although I will actually pull you up on that specific point, because I keep getting people being like, why is this different from a KYC service? It's like, it's not a KYC service. It's a compliance service. And there is a massive difference between someone going, we checked a passport, and someone going, no, we actually properly did what a regulator requires for you to do a KYAML check to be able to accept funds from this person. There is honestly, there is just such a big gap between those two things, and everything I see in the Web3 space is basically we checked a passport, and it's not sufficient for regulation. So don't think it's just KYC. It's not. It's more than that. It's a regulatory stack. Will be a regulatory stack. And that's what we're using it for, right? Already. We've already done over $250 million worth of KYC AML using the instapass platform, which will eventually be available to third parties as well. And there will be, a lot more details about that, but sorry, Russell, I took it from you. They have it back.
Anyway, I wasn't listening to anything you just said, but I'll just continue with instapass as it exists is going to continue live operation. Will continue to operate live on Babylon. That offering of compliance as a service will not be there on Babylon day one. We still have more details to come on this. So I think that's what the spirit of this question is. And when that is being contemplated, the rollout of, compliance as a service, I expect we will have some kind of, there'll be a preview release period where you can go and see how things work and the like. I expect it wouldn't jump straight to production, but that isn't something that is, I could say, is all, planned out and milestoned out to that point yet.
Yeah. It's a complicated product. For legal reasons than for technical reasons. There's a bunch of stuff that has to be got really right for it to work properly, and so we're banging away at that, and it will absolutely come, but it's not going to be available at Babylon. You will not be able to, as a third-party company, use instapass as a service at Babylon. There's too many other things that are
not Babylon launch. I expect it will be available on Babylon.
Not Babylon launch exactly, but post Babylon, we'll be doing our best to bring it as quickly as possible, and we will have clearer timelines when we hit Babylon, but not before then. Yeah. Stop calling it a KYC service.
I did it just to bother you. I would never actually call it that. That was big.
Next question is from Carlo. Hi, when are you planning to add staking on a centralized exchange like what Cardano do? You can stake it with Binance or something like that.
I can do that.
Okay,
I can do that. Yeah, the short answer is we don't have to do anything. We're ready to go. So it's the reason why you're not seeing this has a lot more to do with the exchange side of it, because the actual stake, from a technical level, the actual staking and unstaking part of it is absolutely as easy to do as sending tokens around. It's just a different type of transaction. It's trivial to do. However, if you want to offer a staking feature, you have to then, you imagine what's in the current Radix wallet, right? Like, we've got a separate little page there where you can see your current stakes, you can see the status of the validators, you can unstake, you can see okay, something is at a pending unstake state. Like, there's all kind of this fiddliness of kind of showing people, all right, here's what you're staking to, and allow people to manage that. So, on our side, all of that's there. I mean, anybody could build this on the network, and it's more about sort of UI development than it is about integration to Radix. The Radix integration part of it is extremely easy to do. When we're doing staking to our own nodes and everything, it's you're just pushing transactions. We don't even, there's nothing that we really had to build to do that. So it kind of comes down to more of the complexity of it's the overall question about sort of overall exchange integration to Radix. There's a bunch of things For exchanges that are integrating EXRD, obviously EXRD isn't stakeable. It has to be actual native XRD. So like only exchanges that are listing XRD does staking even become relevant. The other thing about it is, like, as we alluded to at the beginning of this conversation, we were talking about how like exchanges like to move when they can build something and then leave it the same forever. So when we're talking about staking, if they were to build a staking implementation on Olympia, they would have to do some refiddling of that for Babylon. That kind of goes for everything. I mean, everything at Babylon's going to be a bit different. So this is why we're planning on this RCnet stage, where it's sort of like, all right, the way in which you get token balances and do transactions and everything is going to be a little bit different. We give them time to do that integration. So, you know, if I were an exchange and thinking about doing staking on Radix, it's like, well, I'm just going to wait and do it on Babylon because that's the point at which it's going to be a little bit more stable. So there's probably some of that as well. And then there's also just the, you know, obviously there's the business decision of like, you know, are they going to go to the effort of building a special little control panel that understands how staking works on your network and making the UI nice for that? It's like they got to see the justification for that, which means, you know, we're not as big as Cardano and some of these other projects are yet. So, you know, you expect that this isn't going to be one of their top priorities. We're ready to go. As soon as they want to do staking, they're going to find it's not that difficult for them to integrate it. There's nothing we need to add from a technology point of view. It's more sort of a business and UI development issue.
Can I steal a little just to staking related, because I think this was a cool thing, not related to exactly this question, but part of all that revisit we did to the way the architecture works is we've been able to move staking up to like validator components and stuff up to the application level. And the way you do staking is it's just like calling any other application on Radix, and staking will be liquid at Babylon. So you will get LP tokens for stake, which you can then go do what you want with. So this is it was like we were pretty sure we could achieve it, but didn't want to be able to commit to it until we got to the place where we're now able to concretely say, absolutely, you can do it. Liquid staking will be a thing. And it'll now be like the desire for every asset in DeFi.
I mean,
like,
I'm sorry, that's huge. You can't just drop that. You can't just drop that like minute 45 in a round table.
No, it's cool. It's no problem. This is your
We'll find out who's paying attention.
No, literally, you just been like, oh, and by the way, on Radix, liquid staking is literally a function of the underlying ledger.
Watch till the end, folks. There's useful bits in here.
Oh, God. I didn't realize we were going with that now. Fine, cool, excellent.
Right. I mean, you got to be. I know liquid staking has a lot of assumptions, so don't get too carried away about what this means and everything. But it's like it will be something where you'll be getting an LP token, basically like you get an LP token from any other sort of thing. Like that is. So
let's just break it down. Since you've actually mentioned it, let's actually go into it. So what you're saying is, unlike something like Lido, so what the way that Lido works for people who aren't familiar with Lido is a smart contract that you have on top of Ethereum.
You're immediately going to go like way deeper on this than we want to go. Piers is so excited about this topic. He's like, "Oh, I've got the opening. We can talk about this now." We're actually not going to talk a lot more about this. We've done the thing. But
okay, fine.
Like the important thing that I actually wanted to mention about this is like, remember we talked about how developers that have been looking at this, developers that have we have this really critical difference on Babylon where accounts for us are no longer just sort of like, oh, it's just a key pair. It's sort of this weird thing. Like us, it's actually a component. That's your account. What we're saying is that's going to be the same thing for staking. And that actually is a huge revolutionary thing. It's like a validator now, the thing that you're staking to and conducts the emissions and handles all the rewards and all that stuff, is a component. And so it operates at that level. The way you interface to it is in that same sort of way. And so this is, I mean, for one thing, it makes it a lot easier to develop. Like it was kind of cool. Like we kind of built staking in Scripto basically. And like it's, you have to have these links down to yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like you have to link to the protocol because the protocol is the only thing that can issue the new tokens.
When can we have a proper conversation about this? When's this?
We need to talk about it between you and me first before we do it on a roundtable.
I wasn't the one who dropped it. A friggin' minute. I would like 46.
to hear more about Lido.
Surprised about it.
I would like to hear about Lido.
I didn't expect Russ to drop that one either. But it's a good point. We did just go through this. We can say this, yeah.
All right, cool. So, moving on from my excitement. Next question is for Real Bem. Will there be a public alpha or beta of the Radix Babylon wallet?
Ask it. Someone's asking me for wallet info. I've always been repeating, I shall not answer questions about the Babylon wallet, but I'm going to break that and I'll answer. The answer is yes. There will be we need to have an early release of the Babylon wallet for Betanet, because this is part of think of it this way. The purpose of Betanet is to give our developer community the ability to start really in earnest, start building and developing stuff and testing it out end to end. And part of end to end is the wallet experience is part of what they're building. They need to be able to connect the wallet to a web front end, which is talking to their components in the back end and doing stuff with state and being able to experience that whole chain. So, on Alphanet, we have this little browser extension, which kind of gives you this light, cheesy wallet sort of thing, which is just enough for you to be able to kind of all right, I can do a transaction with a front end, but it's, I've said this before, but just to make it clear to people, that is not what the Babylon wallet is going to be like. But that first version of this kind of Babylon wallet paradigm, which I'm very carefully not talking about, but it's going to be very different. There will be a initial release of that primarily for developers at Betanet, so that they can begin understanding is okay, this is how my front end really connects to the wallet, and this is what I have access to. It certainly won't be feature complete, so if you want to consider that an alpha or whatever, it's something like that. It'll be enough that you can do transactions and get the basics in there. I can promise that it will have gradients. It'll be very gradient-y, so that'll be in there at least. And then we'll continue on features from there. So there'll be the actual mainnet version of it, which will have more functionality, and then we kind of have this roadmap that leads off into the future, which is pretty cool. So.
I feel like
I wouldn't say it's Betanet wallet is not going to be hey, go out and tell all your friends to go come out to check out the new Babylon wallet. But it's for developers. I'm assuming this question is coming from the perspective of the developer. We're going to give you the wallet that we've been talking about, so you can actually properly understand how to interface to your applications, because that's what you need to start doing.
Making sure you have all the tools, everything that builders need.
Yes.
No, Jeremy, no, you're not allowed. No, fucking get off. What are you doing? Ridiculous. I don't know what's happening. Jeremy's wearing a Tron t-shirt and Matt hasn't got a goatee. I can't deal with life anymore. And Russell's dropping liquid staking in the middle. Oh, God.
You lost control of the circus, man. This is
right. Man, honestly, I can't hear you, Jeremy, but I don't want to hear you. I don't even want to see you.
I picked this shirt up at the Masari event, and I told Piers next roundtable I'm gonna wear it, and he was like, "If you, I'm gonna fucking kill you," and I was like, "Bring it on,
now
baby."
I understand why it says until Piers fires me, right?
Fires me, right? This was that was the first.
Jeremy's just steadily upping the ante to see what he can get away with. Ridiculous.
Push the envelope, guy. That's what you got to.
Well, I hope everyone has enjoyed this roundtable. It's been emotional.
Because Piers did not enjoy it. It's he's going to have to go vent his frustration.
He's going to go lie down in a quiet room, darkened room with a cold towel over my head. All right. Jeremy, fuck you. Matthew, thank you very much. Russell, thank you very much. Great to have you all on here, apart from Jeremy. And I thank you very much to everyone who watched it until the end. Until next time.
Bye.